can see there, it's Aston with MOTO2N, the mobile repair service for Japanese motorcycles and all kinds of scooters on Colorado's Front Range. Today I am working on a Honda Nighthawk 750. That's a UJM style bike, big 4-cylinder. It needed a new rear tire, new rear valve stem, and I'm going to be putting a new chain and sprockets on it. So you will get to see what that looks like. I will have to cut the old chain off, so I'm bringing my angle grinder and all the hand tools that I need, extension cords. I have the chain, I have both sprockets, I have the rear wheel on me. There is absolutely nothing that I am missing, so we should be able to get this show on the road and make this bike happen today. So follow along and let's see how it goes. Just kind of ballpark it for now. Alright, let's ballpark on the tension. I still have the axle loose. I also have the rear brake is all loose for right now. We're gonna get this chain situated first, and then I'll do final torque on all the fasteners. This job started a couple of weeks ago when I got a call from a customer complaining of a flat rear tire, and he suspected that there was something wrong with his valve stem. He was 100% correct. There was something wrong with his valve stem, but there was also something wrong with his chain and sprockets. Chain and sprockets needed to be replaced on this bike. His rear tire was dry rotted and cracked to the point where it wouldn't hold air even if I did replace the valve stem, so he needed a new rear tire as well. This is some of the grossest chain lube I've ever felt though. This grease, that stuff is something else. Now we can install it. When it comes to chain and sprockets, it depends on the bike that I'm working on, what kind of chain and sprockets I like to use. I like using driven sprockets with DID or RK chains on my sport bikes. I like using the gold chains because I can tell when they're getting dirty. Plus I like cleaning them and making them look shiny again. But on more budget-oriented bikes, I prefer to use products by JT Sprockets. They make a really good set of sprockets and a really good chain for commuter bikes. You can install them on sport bikes too. You can even race on them. There's absolutely nothing wrong with JT Sprockets. It's a great budget option if your bike needs a new chain and sprockets. Another cool thing about JT Sprockets is they actually include a rivet type master link with the chains that they sell. Of course, read the product description and make sure I'm not bullshitting you, like don't take my word for it. But the size 525 X-ring chain that I bought from JT Sprockets, it came with a rivet type master link. So that's what you're watching me install here on the bike. I'm using an RK type rivet tool. First I'm pushing the side plate on, and then I'm dimpling the rivets so that the side plate doesn't come off. You can measure these with the caliper if you want, or you can just use your eyes and make sure that there's a good flare on the rivet side. As long as there's a good flare, there's no way that side plate is coming off. Now I'm going to put all my tools away. And get to reassembling this motorcycle. Working on bikes can be meditative. It can also be really frustrating. It's more meditative if you're doing it on your own.
working on your own projects. It is less meditative and more annoying when you're working on other people's projects, but this chain is on very nicely. JT Sprockets, chain and sprocket.
Honda Nighthawks usually have center stands. I would encourage you not to remove yours. There's absolutely no reason to remove your center stand unless the spring broke or you crashed your bike and bent it to the point where it can't be used anymore. You can see the scrape on this guy's exhaust pipe there. That indicates this bike probably went down. That might explain why the center stand is gone. Anyway, even with the center stand gone, there's some pretty good pieces of metal that you can jack the bike up by. That's what my scissor jack is up against right now. Whenever I'm removing the rear wheels on motorcycles, I like to jack them up as little as possible. That way I don't have to lift the rear wheel out of the back of the bike. It tends to just fall on the ground and then I can wheel it out. On some bikes that can be kind of a pain in the neck because there won't be enough room to slide it underneath the rear fender. But once the rear wheel is off and on the ground, then that's a pretty safe time to go ahead and jack the rest of the bike back up and then wheel the rear wheel out from underneath the bike. There are a bunch of fancy tools for figuring out whether or not the rear wheel is centered, that it's in there straight. You can install it crooked. It's kind of hard to install it crooked though because the swing arm, both ends are parallel to one another. So I found as long as you eyeball the chain run against the horizontal surface or vertical surface, however you want to think of it, of the tire, you can get away with eyeballing it. You can also use the markers on either side. Those are pretty accurate. And there's fancy tools that you can buy that measure the distance from the swing arm pivot to the axle. You can also make your own tool to measure the swing arm pivot. However, I'm just going to eyeball it on this bike and I guarantee you that it will ride straight.
Now it'll go by hand. Just got to get it past the first weathered part. This needs a cotter pen. Don't let me forget. Over for that. Assembly is kind of a pain in the neck. So somebody replaced this at some point, it wasn't me, and then that puts that in the way of all of this, so we have to be a little bit careful here. So we're going to take this off. This kickstand switch temporarily, put it up here. It's a little fastener right there. This guy that says don't open, fuck that, we're gonna open it.
One thing you might think just looking at an older UJM style Japanese motorcycle is that it will be really, really easy to work on, that all of the parts will just kind of fall off and fit together exactly the way that you expect. These bikes are primitive, so they tend to have quite a few interference issues where the parts, they only fit together in one particular way, and then they make working on certain things like changing the chain and sprocket. You have to remove this side cover, this countershaft sprocket cover, and it has no fewer than 6 fasteners, and you have to remove the fill bolt for the engine that says do not remove in order to make room. On this particular bike, the way it was set up, I also had to remove the kickstand switch to make room for the countershaft sprocket cover to come off. There's also this funky side plate that you can see me fitting on right there. That's the other 3 bolts that hold the side cover on. Some of these bikes are just put together in kind of a convoluted way, so if you're not familiar with them, just go slow and make sure you know what you're doing before you crack bolts.
Fasteners do not take a lot of torque, y'all. This is probably too much, but it'll be fine for now. This is not how this goes, but it's how it's been set up for ages, so that's how we're gonna set it up. Again, I'm not trying to tuck this up back behind there the way it comes from the factory. Fuck that noise. This works fine. Can't always use power tools, y'all. Yeah, these old bikes are pretty cool. You can usually get them cheaply. People tend to keep them in pretty good shape. They were the same from like 1989 or something all the way to like 2003. So this bike is a year 2000 model. They were all pretty much the same apart from colors. Final torque on that is good. Now this pain in the ass thing, this is always fun. Figuring out which way these go back together.
I said it's a pain in the butt, but it's not usually that big of a pain in the butt. There are typically marks on the shifter shaft. There's a little dot that'll tell you where the opening for the shifter knuckle is supposed to go. That's assuming that the shifter isn't in the way. The shifter's in the way of the shift knuckle here pretty good. So I just placed it once, and that seemed like about where it needed to go. So that's where we're going to position the shifter.
Remember, there's a cotter pin on the other side I have to insert. That's a 12mm, really?
One of the last steps before I drop the bike off of the jack. I have to fit this chain guard back on the bike. The passenger peg for the left side interferes quite a bit with the front mount, but if you use your magic fingers to stick the nut back up in there, you can get it spun on using your fingers and then tighten it using a wrench, a quarter turn at a time, of course. These sort of little details always add a little bit of time to any kind of job. I would encourage you not to leave the chain guard off. The chain guard keeps chain lube from flying everywhere. It also keeps rocks and crap and debris from getting into your drivetrain. So do not leave it off. You might think that your bike looks cooler without a chain guard. I think it looks stupid, and it makes your bike more dangerous, and it makes it harder to work on, and it gets it even dirtier than it would if it had a chain guard. So leave your chain guards on your bikes, people. It's a good idea. The last step before I call this bike done is to drop it off of the jack. So what I do is I stand on the right side of the bike, and then I put the kickstand down. That way, if I make a mistake, then the bike can only go one of two directions. It can either go left and land on the kickstand, or it can go right and land on me. Either way, it's going to fall in a safe direction. So here you can see me moving the jack down, and then as soon as I have clearance to pull the jack out from underneath the bike, I just pull it out from underneath the bike and I drop the bike onto its kickstand. And then the bike is safely parked the way that it should be. It is totally secure. It's not going anywhere sitting like this. The last two things to tighten on the bike are the chain adjusters. Once the axle is bolted down, all you have to do is loosely tighten the adjusters and they will stay exactly where you put them. And then I have to remember to install my little cotter pen. So I'm happy to report that I did not forget my cotter pen. Here I am installing it right now. That's the cotter pen for the brake stay that keeps the nut, or yeah, it's a nut, the nut in place for the brake stay. So it's important to remember these small details whenever you're working on your own bike or a customer's bike. So the last step before I call the job good, so the bike's good now, but I still have to put my tools away. So you're gonna watch me do that. That's the very last thing in this video. So with that, I really appreciate you guys watching. Feel free to like and subscribe. It helps the YouTube numbers, I guess. I do this for fun and because I think that making videos is fun. Plus it adds a little bit of extra difficulty to my job and it keeps it interesting. So with that, thank you so much for watching. Thanks again. Until next time, y'all have a good one. Bye-bye.